What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Week in Review for August 10th, 2020. I just want to start out by saying thank you. The last Week in Review did very well. I think it was our best Week in Review in terms of view count ever, and I think it's really because you guys are really supporting the channel and hitting the like button and leaving comments and all those things, so the algorithm's picking up the video and sending it out to other people. So please continue to do that. If you do enjoy this video, make sure you hit the like button. If you are new here and you're not familiar with what Week in Review is, I basically take all of the Star Citizen news and compile them into one video and insert my opinions here and there. So let's just get into it. We had a live patch this week. So starting out with patch notes updates, kind of. 3.10 went live between our last video and this one, and there are quite a few issues in 3.10, but it's live nonetheless. But I think we've talked exhaustively at this point about 3.10. It's just a matter of them either fixing some issues here and there or coming out with a 0.1 patch with a lot of fixes. So jumping into the monthly report, we are going to start out with AI. So there's tons of updates here, most of which we've spoken about in the past, like AI combat behaviors for reloading and such. Bartenders were mentioned again. I can't wait to not hear about the bartender anymore. But in the end, server performance in 3.10 is so bad that I've never been even shot at by an AI because it takes 5 minutes for them to even respond if they do. I can't get a drink from a bartender. It would take 20 minutes for me to get served a drink. I'm not going to tip this guy, you know, like, come on. So a lot of these updates are really just difficult to realize in the current game because it just doesn't perform well right now, and it's disappointing. They also said at some point in this update that they fixed the AI on chairs. They didn't. So yeah, there's still a lot of issues going on with AI, and I'm looking forward to seeing future monthly reports about other things that they're working on. This one was a bit more about past work. Moving on to animation, a lot of work seems to be going into what is labeled on the roadmap possibly as death animation improvements. So they mentioned here that it's like knockbacks and knockdowns and other things like that. So death animation improvements might encompass more than just death animations. It might mean a lot of other things. They tend to label and name things very weirdly, so I'm trying to make that connection there. I don't know if it's a good one to make or not. And will we finally be able to throw things properly? I think throwing grenades in Star Marine and throwing things in the PU work okay now, but they're not quite there yet. So I'm looking forward to seeing whatever comes out of improved throw. Moving on to environment art, they mentioned the brush they mentioned in a recent video update. I think it was an ISC, which allows the team to just paint a number of things across a planet with a paintbrush. And it lets them change things on the fly, possibly. So they should be able to create planetary assets a lot faster. Production wrapped on Pyro 3 and 4, and the white box is in progress for 6, while 5 is a gas giant. So planets like Crusader and this Pyro 5 will, have some time before we see them. But again, production has wrapped up on a lot of Pyro planets at this point. Maybe this brush has something to do with it. Moving on to ship art. The Crusader Mercury Star Runner is in final art and planned for 3.11, and the Origin 100 series is getting close as well. And we'll find out later in the sprint report on ISC that it is also in final art, just probably not at the time of writing the monthly report. Weapon art. Work continues on many FPS weapons coming to Star Citizen in the next few patches. Back-end services. Possible player increase on the horizon here. That was mentioned in this post, which is really interesting, that they're finalizing some work, I believe, on some services that will allow us to have more players per server. Very interested by this one. Very intrigued. Let's see what happens in the coming months. Hopefully in the next monthly report, we'll hear more and more and more about this. I'm very intrigued. This does appear also, a lot of what's in this post, to be related to the postmortem that we saw in a previous Week in Review, where they're starting to engineer services and possibly be putting them into the game. Engineering now. I have no idea what is ever going on in this section of the post, but they wrote things. I also saw the word Gen 12 renderer a few times, so it's probably making progress. I don't know. As always, anyone in the comments section that can help turn this part of the monthly report into something that's a little bit easier to consume and understand for people like me, please feel free. Our community would appreciate it. Gameplay section of the monthly report. Building blocks, building blocks, building blocks. They are just getting all that backlog transferred over to the new tech. That's their focus this month, while also being a little hush-hush about whatever they're planning in the next couple updates. They were hinting at things, but nothing that you can even turn into any sort of speculation. They just literally said, we're not telling you, but we're working on things. It's like, oh, okay. Then moving on to vehicle features, this is the team that we continue to see on ISC and SEL talking about the flight model, so most of the update was about that, but now they're working on docking. So this is badly needed in the game. There are many ships that need to dock to others, and things like the Hull C, stuff like that, require a lot of this stuff to get worked on, so any progress on docking is good progress. Moving on to vehicle tech, looking into speeding up ship entry and exit animations. I don't know how many years I've heard these statements. They are actually in the game sort of right now. I think it's like Shift Y and you can get out a little bit faster if I'm correct on some of these things. But yeah, since we've had ships, we've been hearing about the entry and exit animations, so I just kind of ignore that stuff when they mention it. Shields seem to be making progress, though, with the SDF tech, signed distance fields. I wonder if we'll get them in 3.11. I'm curious. This is the tech that should solve all of the shield hole problems with a lot of the ships that we have right now. And then scanning improvements were mentioned, but they're kind of going really left field for me in terms of how cap ships will hide smaller ships when there's so many inherent just like basic problems with scanning that it's very clear that Squadron 42 is affecting the priorities, and this is definitely something related to Squadron, and we just want stuff to not be stupid in the PU. I can't hide behind a capital ship in the PU. So it's kind of weird to see this one in the PU update, but I'm sure we'll see it in the Squadron update. Now, that kind of does it for the monthly report, and we will now move on to roadmap updates. Starting out with roadmap roundup, object push and pull is moving from 3.11 to 3.12. Having to wait for this isn't awesome, obviously. Being able to move SU size boxes, which are the ones that are in when you buy commodities that just pop into your cargo ships, that's pretty important for even things like piracy, right? But the post details that way more about this kind of feature is more than that, right? So object push and pull is part of it, but also mounted gun aiming is part of this. I don't know how that plays into it, but that's interesting. And whatever character assistant locomotion is, I'm not really sure what that is either. They want to deliver all these together, and you would think that they would be able to do one and maybe the other later, but for whatever reason, they want to deliver them together, and I'm sure they have their reasons and they're valid. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not, Then weapon zeroing tier 0 is in 3.12, and this lost some progress. It was in polishing, and they kind of explained that they added an additional task to it. So you'll see on the Reddit roadmap posted by Odysseus1992, I should really give this guy his credit because it is deserved. Week in Review is so much better for these roadmap updates he puts on Reddit. So you'll see that 3.12 lost some progress due to tier 0 weapon zeroing. More stuff. This is the smallest roadmap I've ever seen, and I think this has a lot to do with the fact that they're either working on the new roadmap and they're not really interested in adding too much to this one if they're going to kind of do things differently in the future. But I also think it's partly because the community's reaction to things moving on the roadmap is typically pretty toxic, and I don't think they really want to deal with it anymore. And it's hard to disagree with them not wanting to deal with it, and it's hard to say that we're not being toxic when we sort of are, but at the same time, it kind of comes with the territory of being an open development project. Not everyone's going to understand what you're doing, not everyone is going to be happy with it, and you sort of need to deal with it. But you need to give updates for the people who do. Minor progress was made on cargo decks and improved throw for 3.11, and some major progress was made on the Star Runner, and again, we talked about the kind of loss of progress for 3.12 due to the weapon zeroing task. BR The BR2 ballistic shotgun was also getting some major progress, and then a small regression on the 100i. They clearly added a task there. So that'll do it with roadmap updates. Moving on to video updates. We had an ISC this week that started out with a feature on player feedback and its importance. I mean, we've seen videos like this before, but we'll touch on it again. What do they do with this feedback? That's an important question.
The most challenging aspect to managing player feedback is taking all of that passion and energy and transforming that into something that designers can use and action on.
So a big learning process for us is just how we kind of read the community feedback and how we kind of filter that through to make sure we're delivering the changes the community wants, because the community may say that they want things a certain way, but they might get hung up on how they want us to do it. I
think the key part here, specifically with this team, the flight guys, is that there's a lot of just do this or you should just do that from the community, right? And like maybe about like maneuverability of the ship specifically, but the players may not understand how a simple change that they feel and that they want might affect the rest of the game. So they kind of imply that like, hey, we listen to your feedback and we know what you want, but the way we're gonna get there might be different than you think, right? So hopefully that's the truth and we'll see what happens. They also ask, or answer the question, I should say, why the PTU is so important.
When a build first hits PTU, it's usually not in a fully complete state. We often hold a little bit back so that we can get a little player input on some of the new features and then iterate from there. A lot of people think that PTU is just for bug reporting and talking about bugs, but it can also be a proving ground for design ideas and design concepts where we can take player feedback and incorporate that moving forward.
They don't just gather feedback on what they put in, they put feelers out there to see what we think and adjust from there, and I think that's really cool. So keep rocking on with the PTUs. Next, they touch on why getting these things out to us is so important. And spoiler alert, it's because we're actually the QA.
Balancing every ship from the get-go perfectly is frankly impossible. We need feedback. And there's a difference between our internal QA playing everything or thousands of players.
They simply cannot hire the amount of people that it would take to find all of the issues related to this game. It's impossible. We are paying to do QA's job, and I'm sorry if I offend anyone that is part of the QA team. I don't intend to do that, but I cannot understand how some of these bugs get past them in the first place. Like, these checks and balances seem so obvious to go like, hey, we should probably go to an outpost and make sure the stairs are in the ground, right? Things like that. But the only logical explanation for me is that there's just way too many things, way too many ships, way too many features to test for a average size QA team, whatever that may be. So we are really important because we're kind of the ones who are going to find those things, report them, and then they eventually get fixed. So we're the QA. Moving on, they did a sprint report. Sprint reports are my favorite. They start out with cargo decks. They're coming along really nicely, and they mentioned trade security missions. I assume this is like another variant of like the escort missions that we have now. I don't imagine too much like major iteration on any sort of mission that we have in Star Citizen. They also showed the A03 ballistic sniper weapon. It's beautiful, and it's supposed to be really accurate and fire rounds quickly. So accurate probably means a really high bullet velocity, and being able to fire rounds quickly means there's no like reload kind of like you get with the electric sniper rifle. They also showed the FS9 light machine gun, which doesn't look light at all. This thing looks like a beast, and it has a huge magazine, so lots of bullets to shoot there. They also showed weapon shader, wear and tear shaders for the weapons. These look really great. And then they did a Squadron 42 update here, and this feels like a huge kick in the nuts. This weapon has been shown multiple times in multiple Squadron 42 videos. It's the Vandal Spear, even though they wouldn't say what it was, which was super weird, and this cannot make up for the recent stumbles in communication on the Squadron 42 subject for me. Like, I get it, it's nice, show something, but we don't want to really be shown a spear. We want to know what the state of the Squadron 42 project is, You need to tell us, I'm done with it. I don't care about anything else. That's my personal opinion, but I'm sure some people do like to see little updates like that, right? That's a nice touch, but maybe after we get a real update, you know? Then it would be a nice touch for me. For right now, it feels like like kind of a punch in the stomach. They did some day-night implementation stuff, simply adding what they did in New Babbage and the Outpost to other locations. No big deal here. They continue to show this fire hazard and propagation stuff, which you might think is kind of weird, but for me, or it's like, oh man, more fire, like who cares? But when they show how it propagates around a ship, the engineer job on a ship is going to be an insane job. Like just a fire, popping up on a ship and having to put it out is something that is probably going to be really, really fun. Then they showed some environment organics, grass. This is new and pretty neat. It's nice to see vegetation that isn't more like drought stricken, which is tending to be what we have now in Star Citizen at the moment. They also showed the 100i. It's looking really nice. They also mentioned again that it's in final art stage, even though that was not in the monthly report. They also showed the Star Lifter. This is looking sick. And the Star Runner. Star Wars, anybody? Millennium Falcon, anybody? Like, woo. That is looking slick. Then we also had an SCL this week. It's another one of the game dev videos, so these are cool. If you're interested, make sure you check it out. Link, as always, will be in the description, but we really won't touch it much on this video because there's not too much to discuss there. Moving on to other updates. They corrected and updated the Banu message from Alien Week that was posted, so they made a post about that. There was also a lore post on the Otioni group, which is a big syndicate criminal organization. We had a weekly sneak peek with Orison, which is looking very nice, but again, we won't have that until the first or second quarter of next year. Questions are needed for calling all devs. This is feature or content dev on Star Citizen and Squadron 42. This is really broad, so really like any question you want to know about Star Citizen, ask that question here. Where is meshing is the first question. So people, like, this is where the community is at right now. Talk to us about the major features. Talk to us about where the major features of Star Citizen are. Talk to us about where Squadron 42 is. That is where we want your open development to go. Please get that through your heads, guys. We need these updates. I really hope they talk about server meshing and where it stands at the moment. But again, link in the description. Feel free to ask any question you like and upvote anyone that you think is important in that thread. There is also the compiled 3.10 live feedback thread. This is awesome. It's your one-stop shop for any feedback on any subject in 3.10. Again, link in the description. Go check those out. Flyable Ships post. So they just showed what is new and available in 3.10 in terms of flyable ships. So the Rock, the M50, the Scout, all the changes to those, and the addition, obviously, of the Rock. Speaking of the Rock, this is the Grey Cat Rock sale page, and it's $50 Warbond, which you'll get LTI with, or 55 store credit. No special skin on these. Then they also have a package with a Cutlass, $140 Warbond, which means paid with real money, new money added to the game, and then $150 if you want to use store credit. And man, if this ground vehicle was working properly, this is possibly one of the best earners in the game right now. It's very easy to use. Gems are easy to find. There are way less steps to mine with the Rock than there are with the Prospector and the Mole. I'm loving it. And then finally, we got to end with the best one, the Pico. It's sold out. Enough said. This thing is either loved or hated by the community. We have an emote in my Twitch channel, which, by the way, twitch.tv/SaltEMike. Feel free to stop by, hang out, and discuss any of the things that we talked today on my Twitch channel. But we have two emotes. We have one that smashes the Pico and then one that pets the Pico, and the chat fights amongst themselves about if they're a petter or a smasher. It's kind of ridiculous. But guys, with that said, have a wonderful week. Stay safe. Again, if you enjoyed these videos, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you leave a comment below, discuss anything that we talked about today, and hit subscribe for more weeks in review in the future. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you next week.